Have you ever noticed that your busiest thoughts don't usually arrive during your busiest day? Instead, they wait until the lights are off, until the room is quiet, until your head finally touches the pillow. And suddenly, your brain decides that now is the perfect time to replay that awkward conversation, worry about tomorrow's meeting, rewrite an argument from 3 years ago, or imagine 10 different things that could go wrong next week. It's almost as if your mind has been saving its loudest thoughts for the exact moment you're trying to fall asleep. So why does that happen? Why does your brain seem so much harder to quiet at night than it is during the day? In this video, we'll explore why bedtime changes the way your brain processes thoughts, why overthinking often gets louder when the world gets quieter, and what you can do to make your bed feel like a place for sleep again, not endless problem solving. Think about what your day normally looks like. From the moment you wake up, your attention is constantly being pulled somewhere. Messages, work, family, traffic, conversations, decisions. Even moments that seem quiet usually aren't. There's always something asking for your attention. Then, almost all at once, those demands disappear. You turn off the lights, put your phone down, close the laptop. The room becomes still, and for the first time all day, there's very little left competing for your attention. That's when something surprising happens. Thoughts that barely registered a few hours earlier suddenly become impossible to ignore. The email you forgot to send, the decision you still haven't made, the mistake you made this morning, the conversation you wish had gone differently. The strange part is that these thoughts often feel more important at night than they did during the day, almost more urgent. But bedtime doesn't create these thoughts. It simply changes what your brain has left to pay attention to. One of the biggest misconceptions about overthinking is that we assume our brains work the same way all day long. They don't. When you're focused on a task, your brain spends much of its time processing what's happening around you. But when those outside demands begin to fade, your attention naturally starts turning inward. Researchers often associate this shift with a group of brain regions known as the default mode network. It's involved in many of the things your mind does when it isn't focused on the outside world, remembering the past, imagining the future, reflecting on yourself, thinking about other people, making sense of your experiences. In other words, it's the network that helps your inner world come alive, and bedtime creates almost the perfect conditions for that to happen. When external demands become quieter, internal thoughts become more noticeable, but that still leaves an important question. If the brain is simply turning inward, why do those thoughts so often become anxious instead of peaceful? This is where many people assume something is wrong with them. Why can't I think about something pleasant? The answer has less to do with negativity and more to do with unfinished business. Tomorrow's responsibilities. Questions without answers. Researchers studying insomnia have found that worry, repetitive thinking, and rumination can help keep the brain mentally active long after the body is ready for sleep. In other words, your brain isn't necessarily trying to ruin your evening. It's trying to finish work that it believes is still incomplete. The problem is, bedtime is usually the worst possible time to solve complex problems. You're tired, your emotional reactions are often stronger, and there are very few new pieces of information available. So instead of solving the problem, your brain often ends up circling it over and over and over again, and before long, thinking quietly turns into overthinking. Here's where something unexpected can happen. Imagine that night after night, you climb into bed and spend the next hour worrying, planning, replaying conversations, trying to solve tomorrow before it arrives. Eventually, your brain begins to notice a pattern, not consciously, but through learning. Instead of becoming a place that predicts sleep, your brain can associate the bed with wakefulness rather than sleep. Researchers who study insomnia describe this as one reason sleep problems can become self-reinforcing. The brain is remarkably good at forming associations, just as your favorite song can instantly bring back a memory, or the smell of fresh bread can remind you of home. Your sleeping environment can become linked with whatever repeatedly happens there. If what repeatedly happens there is rumination, your brain can begin expecting rumination. That doesn't mean the bed caused your overthinking. It means your brain has learned, this is where we think. And once that association becomes stronger, simply lying down can become enough to start the cycle. The room gets dark, you get into bed, and before you even realize it, your mind begins opening all the same unfinished tabs again. The encouraging part is that learned associations can also be changed. But first, there's another misunderstanding worth clearing up. When people can't fall asleep, their first instinct is often to fight their thoughts. Stop thinking, clear your mind, and just relax. The problem is, our brains don't work very well under those instructions. The harder you try to force your thoughts away, the more attention you end up giving them. Instead of asking, how do I stop thinking? A more helpful question might be, how do I give these thoughts less work to do? That small shift changes everything, because your goal isn't to eliminate thinking. Your goal is to lower the mental activity that's encouraging your brain to remain engaged with unresolved concerns. And that's exactly what many evidence-based treatments for insomnia are designed to do. One helpful strategy is surprisingly simple. Before bed, give your thoughts somewhere else to live. If tomorrow's tasks keep circling in your mind, write them down. If you're worried you'll forget something, put it on paper. The goal isn't to solve every problem. It's to show your brain that those problems have been safely stored until tomorrow. Another approach is to avoid using your bed as a place for long periods of wakefulness. If you've been lying awake for quite a while and your mind continues racing, many insomnia specialists recommend getting out of bed after roughly 15 to 20 minutes, although exact timing is less important than avoiding long periods of being frustrated you are still awake. Return to bed only when you begin feeling sleepy again. At first, that might seem counterintuitive. Wouldn't staying in bed increase your chances of falling asleep? Not necessarily. Your brain is constantly forming associations by repeatedly using your bed mainly for sleep, rather than hours of frustration. You're gradually helping your brain relearn what that environment is meant for. Finally, try giving yourself a gentler landing before bedtime. Many of us move directly from emails, notifications, bright screens, and endless information into complete silence. That's a dramatic shift. Instead, consider creating a small transition. Dim the lights, read a few pages of a book, stretch, or simply sit quietly for a few minutes before climbing into bed. You're not trying to create the perfect nighttime routine. You're simply giving your brain time to slow down before asking it to fall asleep. And if overthinking keeps you awake most nights, or starts affecting your mood, daily functioning, or overall health, it's worth talking with a healthcare professional. Treatments such as cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia or CBT specifically target the thoughts and behaviors that keep the cycle going and are considered the first-line treatment for chronic insomnia. If your mind becomes louder the moment you get into bed, it doesn't necessarily mean you're an anxious person, or that you're bad at relaxing. It may simply mean your brain has finally reached the first quiet moment of the day, without emails, without conversations, without constant demands. The outside world grows quieter, so your inner world becomes easier to hear. Most of the time, your brain isn't trying to keep you awake. It's trying to make sense of experiences that still feel unfinished. The encouraging news is that this pattern isn't permanent. Just as your brain can learn that bedtime is a place for thinking, It can also learn that bedtime is a place for sleeping. One quiet night won't change that overnight, but many quiet nights can. If this video helped you understand your mind a little better, I'd really appreciate it if you left a like. It helps more people discover calm science. And if you'd like more calm, science-backed explanations about how the mind works, please subscribe to the channel. I'd also love to hear from you. What's the thought that visits you most often after the lights go out? You may discover that many others have been carrying the very same thought. Until next time, be kind to your mind.